Got to get it in. Dustin Smith. Jabari for three and the win. Yeah! He got it!
We are here to fuel your Rockets news. It's a Rockets Fuel podcast. I'm your co-host, Lachard Binkley. Of course, you can always find me on Twitter at Binkley Hoops. And you can always find my written work over at the SB Nation main site or the Dream Shake. And before we introduce our special guest, I'm going to give my co-host a chance to introduce himself.
All right, y'all, it's Vator. You can find me at Vator H-Town on Twitter and also Instagram.
And like I just said, we have a special guest dropping by today. Of course, this is draft season. Some of y'all may know him. We've had him on previous shows before last draft happened, and definitely one of the best when it comes to talking college basketball. I mean, even high school basketball. He pretty much covers it all. So before we go into the show, I want to give our guest a chance to let you know where to find all his great content.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tobias_Bass. That's TOBIAS_Bass. That's the fish.
And of course, I mean, I've been knowing you for a few years now, Tobias, and you're definitely doing big things. You're over at the Athletics now. Can you just give our audience kind of an idea of some of the things you do on a day-to-day basis as far as covering basketball?
Right now, I guess the busiest time for me would be the transfer portal. The transfer portal is going crazy. You had over 1,700 kids put their name in the portal this year, and you'll probably see a couple more with the grad transfers over the next couple of days. So I've just been gathering info, seeing where those kids are going to land, and trying to find out where they're going to end up, and helping them in the process as well. And same with high school. I've been covering a bunch of events this summer. I was actually in Dallas this past weekend covering the EYBL. So I'll do that, and I'll go to the Peach Jam in a couple of weeks as well.
And I think we talked about this last time with the transfer portal and how it could be a good thing and a bad thing. Do you kind of still see it like going more towards it could turn into a negative with so many players being in the transfer portal and not maybe going to teams that they thought they were going to be able to go to?
Yeah, I think this year was a good example, whereas I think some of the coaches thought there would be better names to hit the portal. There were still good kids in there, but I think overwhelmingly, especially at certain positions, as far as like big men and scoring guards, there weren't that many good players in there. So some of them, they're still waiting. I mean, it's May 9th, it's May, and they're still waiting on some of these guards to get in there. So I think also from the other perspective is some of those kids are not going to find a school. I think last year was around 400 or so that didn't find a new school. It'll be that same number again, roughly. So it's an adjustment on both ends. You just have to be able to manage it the right way.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like you said, it sounded like a great idea when it first started, but, everybody's going to start taking advantage of it, and that's just going to mean less spots to go around. But, of course, we are here to talk about the draft that will be happening in a couple of months. We finally got the draft lottery order, and, of course, most Rockets fans know by now the Rockets were not in that top three. That actually fell to 4, and that's kind of where we're going to start today. When you're looking at this draft, first, I want to start with that with you, Tobias. What is like your top 5? And then if you're the Rockets at 4, do you have no problem staying at 4, or would you look to try to move up and try to get a Scoot Henderson at the number 2 or number 3 or wherever he might end up falling? But what's kind of your top 5 when it comes to the draft order?
Well, the top 5, I mean, obviously we know the freak, Victor Wembanyama obviously is going to be number 1. You got Brandon Miller, I'm a big fan of. Scoot Henderson will have to be right in that group as well. I like the Thompson twins, but I'm probably going to go with another. I like Anthony Black, in my opinion. I think he's going to be really good. I might be a little bit biased. He's from Texas, so I might be a little bit biased. And I know him, so I might be biased. I like him as well. And then I like Cam Whitnell, but I also like Taylor Hendrick. I also think Taylor Hendrick will be another really good one in this draft as well.
And as far as just Cam Whitmore, do you think that, he had a disappointing season last season? Do you think that's why a lot of people aren't really talking about him in the top, 3 or 4 picks? I know coming into the year, his name was kind of everywhere, but now it's kind of seemed like a lot of people aren't really talking about Cam Whitmore nearly as much as they were at the beginning of the college season.
Yeah, I mean, you remember the start of the season, I think he was projected to go like 2. Yeah. But he started out the season with, I think he had like a thumb injury or something like that, so he missed several games at the beginning of the season. He came back. He was okay. I think you could say that about a bunch of prospects in this class. Some of them were hurt, or some of them just didn't perform like they thought. So this draft is very weird. So you have some teams, they're probably going to get a good value player maybe in the late teens. Maybe you might even see him in the early 20s. So I think this draft is pretty interesting in that way.
And before we move on to talk about who Tobias would pick at 4, Vader. So, what will be your top 5? Now that we kind of had days to kind of settle down from the disappointment of falling all the way down to the number 4 pick.
Okay, so I'm glad he said he liked Brandon Miller because I've been fighting for my life on Twitter with like a lot of guys I know. A lot of them were kind of iffy on Brandon Miller before the tournament, and then after the NCAA tournament where he didn't play as well as as well as we would have liked to see him play. Like they're really low on Brandon Miller, and to the point where I'm like, you guys are way too low on Brandon Miller. They're like respectable NBA scouts and respectable like NBA franchises that are talking about that they have Brandon Miller at number 2 on their board above Scoot Henderson. And so like when they hear stuff like that, they get like really like, there's no way a team, that's any good has Brandon Miller above Scoot Henderson. And I'm like, it just kind of depends on what you're looking for. And it also kind of depends on what you see those guys becoming when they do reach the next level. And so like, I'm glad that you said that you do like Brandon Miller. Like what is it that you see in Brandon Miller's game that has you still pretty high on him?
I think he's the perfect fit for what the NBA is. So I remember watching him. This was 2020. It was during the pandemic. It was like October. There was a Wooten basketball chemist at McDonald's All-American evaluation event. He was just starting his junior season, and he didn't have that many offers at the time. I think he only had like six offers at the time, and none of them were in the Big 12, none of them were in the SEC. And I said, this kid's a pro. I thought he was really, really good. Then I even did a story on him back then. I thought he was really good, and I'm happy to see where he's become. But he's like 6'8", 6'9", put the ball on the floor, can shoot it from deep, playmaker. That's perfect for what the NBA is today. And some of those players that you see in the NBA that are that size, that skill set, these are some of the better players in the NBA. I don't want to put that much pressure on to compare him to anybody, but I can see him trending in that direction to be a guy like that.
Yeah, he rebounds his position really well. I think he still has like a lot of playmaking potential. Like he didn't have the ball in his hands a lot and wasn't expected to make plays a whole lot. I think towards the end of the season, it looked like they started giving him more of those opportunities to kind of showcase what he could do. And I thought he did pretty good. I mean, his assist to turnover ratio was like pretty even. I think it's like 2-2, but you see that with a lot of guys who come out of college. So like, I think there's something there. Like people keep saying that he's like another Jabari Smith Jr., which they say that in a negative light as far as like a guy who is just going to be a shooter and a defender. And I'm like, that y'all not really even watching Brandon Miller for real, because like he can put the ball on the floor. Like he's much more advanced right now, coming out of college in that regard than Jabari was. And Jabari's working on that. And then like he has like movement shooting too. It's not just spot ups. He's able to get it. He's able to get his own shot right now. Like he can get into the mid range. Like there's just a lot of stuff I think that there is to like about Brandon Miller. We obviously don't know what these guys are going to be. I mean, this is all projection, but like I do like Brandon Miller a lot. So I mean, obviously, if we go on with our top prospects, Wembanyama, I do, and this is gonna sound kind of like maybe salty now, but like I wanted Wemby because I knew Wemby is like supposed to be this super generational guy, and I knew that it would be good for it's good for business, right? He has all this publicity already. He's a name everybody knows already. So like, I wanted Victor Wembanyama for selfish reasons, but I do have to have injury concerns. He would legitimately be probably the first person of his size to have a long NBA career. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like these guys get hurt. Like your body just isn't meant to be 7'5" and play an 82 game season. And, he hasn't even really started putting weight on and stuff. Like you don't know how that kind of stuff is going to affect his body, the wear and tear, it's just a lot of question marks. So I was perfectly okay with falling in number 2. I thought we needed a guy like Scoot Henderson on the team. I think there's even room for a guy like Brandon Miller on the team. I do like the Thompson twins a lot because of the fact that I think that they have their athleticism is just really intriguing, but I do think that is a longer term play than I think you can ask Scoot Henderson right now. And I think that he just has a little bit more savvy to his game and he has a little more pace. I think he can come right in and kind of step in and give you what you want for the most part at the point guard position. Whereas Amin Thompson, I feel like he's going to come in and even though he is probably, from the time he steps in the league, he's probably one of the best athletes in the NBA. But I feel like, going to OTE, I don't know. It just looks to me like it's gonna be a longer process for him to get him to where you want him to be. But the upside swing there is tremendous. And then, like you said, I do like Anthony Black. So, like, another thing I was getting into it with people earlier in the season was, at one point in time, Nick Smith Jr. was a guy who people saw as a higher rated prospect than Anthony Black. And then as the season progressed, I think Nick Smith kind of yeah, it's kind of flipped, right? But like I was all Anthony Black from the beginning. Like when from the beginning of the season to even what I saw in Attorney, I was just like, Anthony Black to me looked like the guy who was more NBA ready, and he looked like a guy who would be able to help you out in multiple ways. I was a little surprised he tested out really well as far as like his vertical leap. I didn't know he could get up like that. Go ahead.
Oh, so he was a former football player. He was a former 4-star recruit wide receiver. So the athleticism is definitely there. He's a little too tall to play wide receiver now, but he is a former 4-star recruit. So he's athletic in a lot of different ways, as far as, just jumping, quickness, able to run up and down the floor. So I think that's one reason why I think he's so intriguing to me. And then it's just him always being compared. He's tough. Football players are tough. So he's going to get his hands dirty, defend, and do those other little things.
Yes, his defense kind of really stood out to me this season. And even in the tournament, even when he wasn't like necessarily like scoring the ball like you wanted to see him, he was still engaged defensively. And that's what you want. You want a guy who's going to be able to contribute in multiple ways, even when their jumper isn't going down. Like he was out there, and he to me, like I'm pretty high on Anthony Black. I just, like we said, we're just kind of like speculating on what they can become, but I see a lot of good things with him. I think he can play multiple positions, and like you said, he's tough, and that's something that the Rockets definitely need. I don't know if I would pick him at 4, but right. I definitely wouldn't be mad. Like so here's another thing. You talked about trading up. I mean, there's a scenario where maybe they could trade back and get something or get multiple picks, and I'd be comfortable with like taking him a couple picks later than that, along with something else. And then another guy you said, Cam Whitmore, he, like you said, everybody was super high on Cam coming into the season, and then he kind of didn't live up to those expectations. But this is a weird draft. There's just so many guys that you just like, somebody that is not top 5 is going to end up being one of the best players in this draft. Like I like Cason Wallace. I think Cason Wallace is a good, point of attack defender. I think that, like he brings a lot to the table too. So there's just there's Taylor Hendricks, like you said, like that's a guy who like he looks like he could be like a freak in the NBA, like if he puts it all together. But yeah, those are kind of the guys that I like right now.
Well, I want to ask Tobias. I mean, of course, the Rockets were at 4. I mean, are you sold on anyone? Just absolutely, the Rockets need to stay at the number 4 position. Don't worry about trading up. Or would you be more inclined to try to trade up and try to get a Scoot Henderson? If that opportunity presents itself, or are you just fine staying with the Rockets staying at 4, and you have that much confidence in a Amin Thompson or someone like that to where you wouldn't even think about worrying about trying to trade up and in the process of losing assets to move up a couple of spots?
I would definitely consider the notion of moving that pick, because it's weird. So you see Harden talking about potentially coming back. So let's just say Harden's on the team right now. You have Harden, KPJ, Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, Sagoon.
Yeah.
That's odd to me. Somebody probably has to go in out of that group. I think we know who I'm talking about, and out of that group of 4. So at that point, then the question would be is, what could you even get for him if you wanted to trade him? Could you add him could you maybe add him with the 5th pick? I don't know if I would do that. So it's kind of odd the possibilities here, but I would definitely consider it. If I would have to give up a ton to move up even maybe like 1 spot, I would consider it. But if not, I think you would probably have to stay there, and I would probably take a upside pick and maybe a Thompson, because you can't get Hendry because you have Jabari there. You don't need a center at the 5 and LP. You have a scorer and shoot Green. So I would probably go long-term upside, and Thompson would probably be the pick there for me.
If you could pick between like one of the Thompson twins and Brandon Miller for the Rockets, who do you think who's a better fit not just now, but maybe even long term? Like who would you pick if it was your decision?
Miller and Thompson, I would definitely pick Brandon Miller, in my opinion. If I would for sure get it. The issue is the Hornets, they don't need another guard. So I would, if I was the Hornets, I would probably go Miller at 2, just based on necessity.
Okay, what if someone said to you that they don't think it's sometimes it's not always a good idea to draft for fit. Are you saying this is a good fit pick, or are you saying that you think that Brandon Miller, is a good fit and you believe that he's going to be really good in the future?
I think for them, I think it will be both. I think they need a wing, and I think he fits what they need. You drafting, so they draft Scoot. You guys, Scoot, LaMelo, and they have a bunch of guards on their team they drafted in the past 3 years. Some of them aren't ready yet, but it's the fact you drafted 3-4 guards in a row, and then you signed guards as well, like Terry Rozier's on the roster. So you would have to get Scoot and then move probably 2 of them. So I mean that they could very well do that. And the Hornets, they've been here before. They draft in the top 3 every year. This isn't anything new to them, but that would just makes things more difficult. So I think Miller for them would make the most sense.
As far as Amen Thompson, do you think that it's a little bit overblown with his shooting concerns? Do you think he can eventually become a better shooter, or do you think that that's something that's can possibly hold him back when he gets to the next level?
I think he can develop to be a better shooter. I guess for me is, who did they really play in that league? And they're really talented. That's not me knocking the players. There were some good players in there for sure, but it's just as a collective, play like the same 4 teams pretty much every time. Whereas in college, you get to see a bigger, much body of work. Then too, we really couldn't watch them like that. They don't come on TV. It's really kind of hard to watch them at times. So they're really talented. I think that they'll be successful. I think that it'll be something he has to work on going forward. He's a great athlete. Sometimes they tend to rely on athleticism a lot early on. I think as he continues to develop, he'll have to become more well-rounded, and shooting will definitely be a part of the team, especially the way with the young team that likes to run up and down the floor. He's going to have to be able to make shots.
Yeah, I guess that's the biggest thing when it comes with the Rockets, because, the Rockets, of course, were one of the worst shooting teams that have been in the last 2 or 3 years, and now you're bringing in another player that can possibly having issues, shooting from beyond the arc. So, just overall, when you're talking about the Thompson twins, you're talking about Anthony Black, are there any other players that you think can possibly jump up into the top 5 that maybe nobody's talking about right now?
I think Taylor Hendricks would be an option. I think that he's one. I really like his game a lot. I think people, when they go back and look at this tape, I think he'll be one that the Rockets wouldn't pick him, but I think another team, maybe somebody moves up and moves down. I think I could see them taking him, because I remember a couple of weeks ago they had him going like mid lottery, maybe even like high as 10, but I've seen other boards for him going like 6. So I could easily see him going up another spot or 2.
And one more thing, I just wanted to ask you about. Do you think that his athletic ability and his playmaking ability, do you think that ultimately kind of outweighs his shooting problems, and that the fact that the Rockets would be perfectly fine with him? And do you think that he's more of a project, or do you think he can kind of make an immediate impact like players like Keegan Murray did last year? Do you think that it will just take 2 or 3 years for him to make that impact? On a Rockets team that, of course, is still rebuilding, but they're looking to win starting next season.
You talking about one of the Thompsons?
Amen Thompson.
I don't know if he would. So the issue you even saw they have a different coach, so it's not fair for me to judge him early. But you saw the issue last year was sometimes Jabari just didn't get enough shots. Some of that could have been his own fault too, because he doesn't want to bang in the post. He wants to shoot outside jumpers, but it's tough if you have a KPJ, a Jalen Green, and a Jabari. You add a Harden to that team, that makes it even worse. So, what you drafting another wing? Where are these shots coming from? And I'm sure they would figure it out, but just on paper, in my mind, I can just imagine him being the 4th, 5th option from the jump. He's probably not going to have enough shots or even reps to even showcase some of that ability. So I think that's why if I was them, I get Harden. I get it, but he doesn't fit the timeline of what they're trying to do. Everyone's super young on that team. Why would you want to bring another 30-year-old over here, and he's going to demand the ball. I would just keep it young and just continue to grow as that's what I would do if I was Houston.
Yeah, it's funny you said that. Like, I was okay with Harden coming back 100% if we got Wembanyama, just because now you need a veteran point guard who can facilitate and get Wemby shots where he needs to get them. Now, I don't know. It's going to be really tricky, especially when a lot of the guys that you bring in, like you said, are going to be like a wing. One other thing I wanted to ask you about the Thompson twins before we move off of that, though, like, I have ran into some people who think that Ausar is actually the guy. Like he's not as flashy as his brother, but a lot of people think that he might be a better pro. What is your opinion on the two twins? Which one do you think is going to ultimately be a better pro?
I think Ausar is probably more steady. He's probably like his floor might be a little high. I think he's just more steady at the moment. But I mean, if he pops and develop we could be talking about, maybe a few multi-time All-Star because everything that he can do so well. But I'll probably go with Amin at the moment. It's just higher upside. You're taking a risk. So if I'm gonna take a risk, I'm gonna take a big risk. I think he would probably be the riskier pick, but the upside there's a little bit higher in my opinion.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it too. I think as far as the things that he does not do well right now is shooting, and it's crazy because we're always like, okay, we can improve a guy shooting, and sometimes you see it get improved, and then sometimes they just never end up shooting. But he's a guy who, like, if he can just become halfway respectable from shooting anywhere on the floor, I think he'll be really tough to defend because he is super explosive. He can jump out the gym. He can like make all the passes. So yeah, like if I had to pick one, I'm definitely going with Amin for real.
Yeah, and of course that's the top of the draft. I wanted to move on to the Rockets. Actually have a number 20 pick. There's a chance that they could package that with in number 4 and try to move up. But for now, they do have the number 20 pick, and so I want to kind of get what's the range of player that Rockets fans could expect to be around at that time. Is a Derek Lively still around at that time? I mean, more likely probably going before that, or Derek Whitehead or Nick Smith. So what's some of the players that you think will be around that, 15 to 25 range where the Rockets may have a chance to pick up?
I think you said between 15, I could see a Keontae George, Jordan Hawkins from UConn, Bryce Sensabaugh from Ohio State. I think Derek Lively will be there too. Derek Whitehead will be another one there. It'll be probably guys around that range. Jett Howard, another shooter. At that point, I would just go specialist. So, if you, like you said, you're going to have an issue with the Thompson twin who can't shoot, it's fine. We can maybe double back and get a Jett Howard, a shooter. Bryce Sensabaugh can make shots. I would look to get someone, Jordan Hawkins. I don't think he'll be there, but if he is, I would love to go get a guy like that. He's specialist. I know at the bare minimum, he'll be a shooter that can come off the bench, at the bare minimum. And he's athletic. So, I would look to get a guy like that if you have to get at the moment, a non-shooter and a Thompson twin.
And I wanted to ask you about Derek Lively because he's another one of those guys that, before the season started, everybody was talking about him. He was one of the higher potential draft picks, and then he kind of fell off a little bit last season. And at that point, of course, the Rockets not getting Wembanyama. They still have Alperen Sengun. And one of their biggest issues last year was they really didn't have a backup center that can really come in and help out, on the boards or really just do anything outside of what they already had with Sengun. So what do you think of a Derek Lively? Do you think he's a player that can make an impact like a Mark Williams type player next season?
I think he's going to be a developmental big. Offensively, probably not going to do a ton, but he will rim protect. I guess for me, at 20, let's say he's there. Yeah. I would probably lean to go get me a veteran big. I would just spend a couple dollars and see if I can get me a veteran big. One, that'll help Alp's development as well because you're young, but I think in the case with a big man, especially someone as talented as Alp, I would like to get a veteran big behind him and let him show him some things, developmental piece like that. But Lively's a solid pick. I know at the bare minimum he'll rebound and he'll run the floor. So I just think if you draft him, what is he? I don't know how much he'll be able to contribute to you early on. You might even see him maybe couple games in the G League here and there. I could see that early on. So I would probably go specialist shooter, or I would sign a big at that point if he's still on the board.
What you think about Whitehead? Because he was a guy who he was like, wasn't he like the number one ranked player on some sites? Like what happened to him?
Injuries. He got hurt, I believe, at least twice. He got hurt a lot. He started off the season hurt. He played a couple games and got hurt again. He's super talented though. I loved watching him in high school. I thought he was really talented. He had the potential to be one of those guys. I think that if he can stay healthy and he's in the teens or 20s, maybe a playoff team gets him, I think they'd be very lucky to have him. I think that he could be a player down the road that'll be successful because a playoff team, they won't rush him to be on the floor. He'll be able to learn and be able to develop. So if someone could get him that 20 range, even the Rockets, for example, I think you're getting a good player right there.
Yeah, he's a guy, like, I have my fingers crossed that, if he slides, like, I feel like you got to take him, even if Lively's there. And I've been kind of on the Lively bandwagon just because I do want like a rim runner, like, guy that's going to catch lives, block shots, lock the paint down. He's super skinny right now, Lively is. And so, like you said, he may have to take the Clint Capella route that first season as far as, like, getting stronger, figuring out how to play the game. But I'd love to have him in the program, man, and then just get him up to speed, like you said. But also bringing in like a guy like Brook Lopez, or like you said, like a vet big that can like really help Şengün out and also like provide defenses. It's probably the way that, like, if they're really trying to win, that's what they need to do. But as far as like that 20th pick, like, I'd love to get one of those guys from Duke for sure.
Yep.
Now, I want to ask you about, of course, a player that a lot of people in Houston know very well. Not necessarily that the Rockets would, be going after him, but what do you think of a Marcus Sasser? I mean, I know he's a little bit undersized. He's more of a combo guard, but of course, he's one of the better shooters in the draft. What's kind of your overall opinion of Marcus Sasser, and do you see him going probably later in the first round?
I like Marcus Sasser. I think I was having a conversation with someone about this before. Guards like him that are undersized, that are buckets, they need to go to a team that's dealt with those type of players before. You look at like the Clippers with Lou Williams, the Rockets have had Lou Williams, the Hawks have had Lou Williams. Players, even the Nuggets have had a guy like what's my boy plays for the Clippers now?
Bones Highland.
Bones Highland. Players like that, because what happens is you'll have a player like him, they'll go to a team that just doesn't know how to use him and they struggle. But
Cam Whitmore.
I can see he needs to go to a team that's had a player like him before, so they know how to put him in situations to be successful. He's a good player. He can shoot it. He can score. And I think teams, they need guys that can come off the bench, and that's just their job. You can come off the bench and score and make shots. I think that he could be one of those players. I could see him slipping into a late first round scenario. This draft's weird. It's all over the board. I could see someone taking a chance on him.
I'm glad you brought up Lachard, because we disrespected Jarris Walker. I completely forgot about Jarris Walker.
Really good player. Just didn't even mention him.
No, we completely. Hey, no disrespect. Like, I really like Jarris Walker. I thought that he measured shorter than I would have liked.
Yeah.
Barefoot. He measured like 6'6", but he has like a 7'2" wingspan, and he was like 248 pounds. So. I mean, he is not, he does not have prototypical height, but defensively, man, that dude was a monster in college, and they're saying that he has some stuff to his offense that we didn't really see, like, tap into, at UH. So yeah, he's a guy that I really like a lot. I'm sorry I forgot about him when we were talking about like that early pick.
He's one that people will see that he's actually a very underrated passer. He actually can make decisions with the ball in his hand, especially in the low post or at the top of the key. I don't think we got to see that much at U of H, but that's something that he does. He does well. The jumper is not bad. He can make mid-range jumpers. He's an interesting prospect. I want to see where he goes. Fit will be important for him, like it is for most of these guys. But he's a good player, and he's coached super well at U of H. I like him.
Yeah. I mean, of course, yeah, like, I don't know how we just totally overlooked him, because there's a chance that a lot of people, I saw some of my drafts have him going maybe 5 or 6. So he would definitely be one of the highest U of H draft pick probably since Olajuwon. I don't think there's been another U of H draft pick that's been in the top 10 that I can remember.
No,
maybe I'm forgetting somebody, but I think Olajuwon's been the last one. I want to also ask you, are there any players that may have been projected going in the second round to the late first round that maybe nobody's talking about that you really like, that you think that can really have an impact on the team next year?
I need to see where they have Jalen Wilson. I think Jalen Wilson is one. He might be a first round pick. I can see him falling in the late teens. He's one that I really really like for sure. I'm still waiting for some of these guys to make decisions. You know, you're looking like a Bona, a Julian Phillips, Kobe Brown. Those guys can go back. Bobby Clemens, another one. All those guys can go back. So, but I guess one that stands up to me is Brandon Podziemski from Santa Clara. I think he's really good in the stories, big time. He was at Illinois for a year, didn't really play. He was one of the few that was smart, and he decided to transfer down a level. He was one of the best players in that league, and he's gonna get drafted in a couple of months. So I think that he could be a guy that comes off the bench, super high IQ, can shoot that three ball, and I think he could be a guy that could come in and be impactful as a second rounder.
I got a guy that is kind of controversial, a controversial name. He can't jump high. He doesn't. He has I think he has a negative wingspan. Like Amani Bates. Like, what do you think about that dude, man? Because like he was supposed to be like this really, really like, you know, people were throwing around. He might be like a top first pick in the draft, you know, a few years ago, and then all that stuff came out about, oh, his vertical was like 20 something, you know, and then his wingspan was like less than his height and all that kind of stuff, and so. And then he had that rocky freshman season over at Memphis. What do you think about him? Like, do you think he's going to be successful on the pro level?
He's super talented. For him, it just got to be all about his mindset. One, I think him going to a team with a good culture will really help him. I think help him grow up in some ways. He needs to be around good guys. Putting him on a team with youngsters, I don't think he needs to do that. I think he needs to go to a team where they're older. They're going to put their arm around him and show him this is how you become a pro. Because the talent's there. I mean, he was the number one player in high school for a reason. Then they started bringing up things like you said don't really matter. Yeah, his arms are short. Okay, I mean, sure, his hands are small. Okay, I mean, sure. But the talent's there. I just think he needs to go to the right situation. And I think he could be successful. And, I mean, you know, he shot – I can't remember what he shot from three, but he shot it well from three. At the bare minimum, we can see him as – maybe a backup shooter. I think you could even see him doing that in some way. He'll be more talented than a traditional shooter, but I could see him fitting into a role like that.
And the blueprint is out there. We see a guy over at Memphis who has a negative wingspan, and that dude is a knockdown shooter, Desmond Bain.
Yes,
so
yes, he is.
Yeah, so like you know, we put a lot of stock in these things that you know they mean something, but at the end of the day, like if you can hoop, you can hoop, and that's one of the things I was just kind of curious. What was your opinion on him?
Yeah. And before we get, to the end of the show, I want to ask you, of course, Rockets have so many young players on their team, so I know there's a lot of these players that you definitely have, watched over the years. What was kind of your opinion of the Rockets just this past season? Did you see the improvement that you thought you would see in players like Jalen Green? And, of course, we saw Jabari Smith play a lot better towards the end of the season, but Did you see the improvement that you wanted to see from the young players on the Rockets like Jalen Green and Jabari Smith?
I saw it definitely from Jalen Green. He's gotten much better, and he has a savvy of like a star player in this league. So I definitely like to. I liked what I saw from him as far as he got better. And Jabari, he played better as the season ended. I want to just see him be able to score more in a variety of ways and less as a jump shooter because. I mean, he's big. He's 6'10", 6'11". You can't back down little guards sometimes. So I want to be able to see him tap into his game because he should be able to score just easy points just around the rim because he's so athletic and talented. So you look at switches, they'll put guards on him sometimes in the switch. He should be able to just punish defenders doing that. So for him, I think that's just the next step. Yeah, we know you can shoot or you at least want to shoot. Work on, diversifying your full game. I think that's when you'll be able to see him. They have a new coach. I think strategy was an issue too. They didn't put him sometimes in ways that he could succeed. So with the new coach, I think that'll definitely help him going into next season.
Man, Tobias, you spitting, dog. Like with Jabari, one of the things like when I saw him started going down in that post and operating from the elbow and doing stuff like that, and playing more like a Rasheed Wallace type of game, or getting those shots in the same area where LaMarcus Aldridge used to get his shots, in them same areas where Kevin Garnett used to get his shots. Then I started getting excited because, like, at first I thought we just had like this 3 and D 6'10" dude who wasn't really like shooting threes. And then I was like, okay, some of the stuff that he was doing in college does translate to the NBA. Like he's just turning and he's shooting over these dudes like they're not even there. And so that made me really excited about like his prospects going forward. I'm glad that you said Jalen Green improved. A lot of people keep trying to point to like, yeah, his true shooting percentage went down a little bit, and I'm like, he's getting shots completely differently from the way he got shots last year. Last year he played a lot more off ball. This year he was like required more often than he probably should have been to like create his own shot with negative spacing on a team who was the worst 3-point shooting team in the NBA. And he's out there like, you know, as a guy who like, I wouldn't say his handle was like a strong point of his game coming into his rookie year. And then last year you saw him cooking. He was actually out there. He was kind of getting to the basket at will a lot of times. He uses escape dribble. He was backing up, and like it was just one of those things where I saw growth in him. Maybe it wasn't reflected in the percentages, but the way he was playing, other than the bad shots and some of the stuff that he did that I feel like can be coached out of him, I thought that he definitely like took some strides as far as like growing his game.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, definitely. And one more question before we wrap up the show. You talk to a lot of college and high school coaches. You talk to scouts. You talk to agents. A big thing that's been made, especially with the video of Wembanyama, kind of pumping his fist that the Rockets were going 4 instead of number 1. What's kind of been a perception around the people that you've been talking to as far as the Rockets? Because, I mean, we've heard a lot of people say about the Rockets culture being bad, but you actually talk to a lot of people that are coaching these young guys that are possibly going into the NBA. So what's kind of been the perception you've been kind of hearing around, as you've been going from like city to city?
I just think they're young, man. They just got to grow up. I think that's it. You have a young team, they're super young. I think we're the second or third youngest team in the NBA. Yeah. And you have some different personalities in there. I think that plays a role into it. I think they need veterans. They need new leadership, and they did that. They have a new coach in there. He's been around. He's been successful. He was successful with the Celtics. He went to an NBA championship. So I think that the overall respect for him will come in there and change. And, he might have to come in there and get rid of some guys. That might be what it is. He might have to do that. So if that's the case, I think that'll help them grow up fast, and them being coached hard, I think they'll just help them grow up. But they're young, man. I mean, they're kids. These dudes are 21, 22 years old. Yes. I mean, do we think that Charlotte's culture was the best? Probably not. Do we think Detroit's culture? Probably not. They're young. That's just how it is. The young millionaires. They'll grow up and they'll be fine. I just think they need a new leadership, and they got that.
This is why you cannot convince me that Wemby wasn't rigged going to San Antonio. I think the NBA, they were like, you know what? And I get it. I don't like it because it affects my team. But it's like, I feel like they feel like they have to protect their product. And like, who is a bigger name in basketball, moving forward than Victor Wembanyama? You have LeBron James, who's about to retire. Kevin Durant is about to retire soon. All of these guys who've been kind of, holding the torch and, for all these years are on their way out of the league. And Victor Wembanyama is the next big thing. So, he kind of got steered to an organization that is, is reputable. You have Greg Popovich there. Everybody loves Pop. He's considered one of
the
you got the French connection. Like, I just think it was like the perfect storm. And, him going to San Antonio just made sense. And, that's all I'm going to say about that.
I think it makes sense. I mean, Boris Diaw owns the team that he played for this year. Yeah. Tony Parker has mentored him since he was a kid, and Tony Parker also was a co-owner of the team he played for last year. So, I mean, the connections run deep. I think that the Spurs, they develop players very well, especially foreign players. So I think that it was just like he said, it was a perfect storm of things. Yeah, that's all we
can say. That's all we can say, Tobias. Yeah. But like when you have a multi-billion-dollar business, I think you're gonna do. You might
frozen envelope type thing.
You might do something to protect your investment. Like Victor Wembanyama, potentially is going to be the face of the league in a couple years. Yeah. And do you want to send him to Charlotte, where you have like yeah. Do you want to send him to Detroit?
About to take over? Yeah.
Unfortunately, even though Houston has been a good franchise, right now we have this reputation of not being one. Or do you want to send him to San Antonio, where there's Greg Popovich? And like you said, there's all these connections to Boris Diaw and Tony Parker and all of these other things. Like in retrospect, now that I've had a few days to really think about it, it just made sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, definitely. Before we wrap it up, Tobias, again, let everybody know where they can find all your great content.
You can follow my content at The Athletic. We have a bunch of stories coming out as the draft approaches us rather quickly. We'll have a bunch of mock drafts, player analysis on some of these players, and I'll even get a couple of college coaches to chime in on majority of the prospects in this draft. They'll be breaking down their games and talking about how they think they'll be successful at the next level.
And again, I appreciate you coming on. Every draft season, you're definitely one of the first people I love bringing on, talking about a lot of stuff that, you know a lot more about the draft process or the players that coming into the draft. Because, you watch them beyond just at college or them playing in, with the G League at night. You've been watching them ever since high school and probably even before that with some of them. So I definitely love bringing you on because you give great insight to stuff that we may not be paying attention to, especially during the season, while the Rockets are playing. So definitely appreciate you coming on.
No problem, man. Bring me on whenever you like.
Oh, man, absolutely, absolutely. Of course, as always, my co-host, I appreciate you joining me, Vator.
Oh, of course, man. Like I said, anytime you need me, I'm here. And like Tobias, great stuff, man. All of us guys who are watching these YouTube videos and we think we know everything there is to know about these guys, but you're actually in the building, and we need more perspectives like yours, because I deal with these dudes every day, and we watched a couple hours of YouTube videos on a guy, and we think we're experts. We think we know more than the NBA scouts after a couple hours. So like Lachard said, definitely appreciate you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's going to do it for today's show. We're going to have a lot more draft talk coming up because we have, a little bit of time before we actually get around to draft time. So we definitely have more draft coverage. We appreciate everybody that joins us every week that supports our channel and checks out our YouTube videos. So make sure you check us out for our next episode of Rocket Fuel Podcast, and we will check you later.